All right, so we should be catching up soon with the stream. I see some folks waiting, which is very exciting. And I'm a little nervous because I've been having internet
Awesome.
connectivity issues, as you know, so I'm hopeful that
But
everything goes great. All right,
I'm sure it's gonna go well. We got this.
I'm still waiting for YouTube to go live. Oh, I might have to do some. Wait, nope, we have liftoff. Fabulous. Hello, welcome
Okay.
everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you for bearing with us. I was a little bit nervous, and hopefully Mady has a thunderstorm where she is right now, and I've been having internet issues all morning, and I'm real hopeful that we can make this work and have a wonderful office hours for y'all. So, welcome, Mady. It's fantastic to have you. Have you been on office hours before? I don't remember off
Rachel,
the top of my head.
I don't think so. I think the
Mm.
last time I was hanging out with you on YouTube and Twitch was probably paper reading when we were at that.
Mm.
We read a couple of papers together, so that was fun. But I haven't been back since. So this is great. I'm really excited to be here. I mean, I love hanging out with you. You know that. So thank
Oh,
you for
yeah,
having
me
me.
too. Yeah, I'm also really excited to have you, and I know the community is as well. Amina says hello. Hello, Amina. Great to have you on the stream. Um, so I thought while we're waiting for people to formulate and enter their questions, it would be really helpful for you to talk a little bit about what your role is. So you're head of product marketing, and I think people probably know you from your technical talks that we have a couple of great ones here on the channel, and your sort of evangelism in that space. So how does that play into your current role? Can people expect to see you elsewhere? And what do you do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think on a very high level, I help figure out how Rasa employees, our sales team, our product team, and others should be talking about our products, about conversational AI, and about, us as a company. So I work with several teams. I work with sales, I work with product, I work with DevRel to
Mhm.
figure out how we should be doing that and how we should be talking to enterprise developers, to non-developers, to business stakeholders, technical decision makers, and others. And I come from an evangelist background, so I was a product evangelist at Rasa, and before
Mhm.
that, I was in product and engineering and research for like a hot sec. But and so that kind of helps me because our products are so technical.
Mhm.
So taking all of our technical products and articulating that in a way so that it makes sense to all audiences is a big part of what I do. And I'm really passionate about how our customers and how, the market can find value in Rasa products and in conversational AI overall.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think either of us would be here if we didn't think that chatbots could be good. Oh,
Yeah,
and
chatbots can be good. A lot of them are not good. We're really keen on building really good ones and helping our community and helping our customers build really good ones. And so, we want to create the right content to help you along that journey. We want to create the right kind of strategy to help you along that journey, and we also want to help build a product with you.
yeah, definitely. Uh, from the chat, we've got Daniel Chen. Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. And Amina says she knows you from the Udemy course that you worked on, Rasa for Beginners. So,
Oh, very cool. No, that's great to hear that. I know that we're working on doing a refresh of the Udemy
mhm,
content, but thank you for saying that. That's great.
yeah. I think Rasa for Beginners will probably. Oh, there's a major version update. Anyway. But I don't see that necessarily going away at any point. Hi, Ravi. Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome. So I'm still waiting for folks to finish formulating and entering their questions. Feel free to do that. Oh, yes, please, Amina, lay those questions on us. Amina always brings fantastic questions. Um, yeah. So something you mentioned that I think is interesting and relevant for our community is that you really work with customers, so people who are working with Rasa as enterprises to help build, I mean, usually very big, very complicated assistants that solve problems that otherwise would be very difficult to solve, just to be very vague, but also like try to capture everybody in the bubble.
Mhm.
Um, And something that was really interesting for me to learn in the developer survey is that almost all Rasa developers, the vast majority of Rasa developers, are using Rasa for work, right, as part of their job. And I think that you have a really some unique insights there. So I wonder what your main pieces of advice would be for a developer who is working on a Rasa assistant at an enterprise or corporation, just sort of generally. One little nugget of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to build proofs of concepts. It's really easy to build like simple FAQ assistance or a POC, and it's hard to scale.
Mm,
And I know that we've had a few talks on the many faces of scale. Like, really, what does it mean when we talk about scale? It means scale, rolling that out to more users. It means, the team that's building those assistants will grow as well. So, how do you work, in tandem with like a much larger team that's working together on the
mhm,
same assistant or different parts of the same assistant?
mhm,
It means rolling it out in multiple languages, adding more, backend integrations, adding more scope. And then as you roll it out to more users, you have more conversations coming in. So there's more data to deal with. So scale can mean many different things. And, being able to handle the complexity of all of the different phases of scale is something that's really critical. And then not to forget, this is all like wrapped around a security and governance layer because, getting ready for production is a whole other ballgame. Um, and you need to be following security best practices, enterprise guidelines when it comes to securing data at rest, data in motion. So I would say like planning ahead is
mm,
critical, knowing that this is going to be challenging and you'll have to do lots of different things before you go to production. Um, and you need tools to make all of this happen. Just solid NLU and dialogue management isn't going to get you there. You also need enterprise tools
mm,
that will help make some of this easier, that will help make it easier for you to follow, CDD or, like CI/CD and deployment best practices, or data anonymization and all of those things. And I would say that even that is probably not enough. You still need to follow the kind of best practices laid out by your center of excellence or your
mm.
enterprise. So yeah, lots of things to think about, and it's important to plan ahead.
Expect complexity. Oh.
Expect and plan for complexity. Great
Uh,
way to put it.
and I see some questions, and we'll get to them in just a second. But I do want to do a little plug. If you heard Mady talk about security and you're like, I have not thought about security. Tomorrow, we're going to have a special edition live stream with Jamie, our security engineer here at Rasa. We're going to talk about our recent security advisory that you might have gotten a notification from on GitHub, and also, as always, answer questions. So if you have security questions specifically, tune back in tomorrow. All right, lots of questions. From Amina. When you're using a Boolean slot to specify yes is true and no is false, in my case, it is in French. I don't know how to say oui is yes and non is French. Sorry, is false. It also is French, but I read that wrong. Boolean slots. It's been a
I feel
minute
like
since I worked with
you,
them.
yeah,
Let me just pop open the docs real quick.
yeah. I was doing the same thing.
So I think the question is, by default, the mapping is from yes to true and no to false. Um, and I think that that actually comes from intents. I'm pretty sure.
It's also, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's also specified in the domain file.
Mhm. Yeah. So, and I will say, one of the things that's coming up in 3.0 is that we are making it easier to be explicit about slots. And by easier, I mean obligatory, which will handle a lot of this type of edge case. So, eyes peeled for that when that happens. Soon, TM. Yeah. I don't know
Cool.
if you need to specify a mapping by hand.
I don't either, but I am looking that up.
Yeah. What about the
Um,
domain file?
one of the really cool things is that our documentation is pretty great and robust. But that also means that you might have to spend a little bit of time looking for the answer. As you can see, we're trying to find it too.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So the way that you set that slot will depend, I think, on the specific flow of your conversation. If you're doing it in like a form, for example, then you can in the form say, hey, this is the slot I want to set, this is the utterance that we're going to use, this is how we're going to take the information. And if you're doing it from intents, like from affirm or deny, I think you could just change, if you were working from an example where those were the names of the intents, I think that you could just change the training data, or you could use a button to set it to yes
Yeah,
or no. That might also be helpful, and then you could have the display text be, oui and no. Yeah, I hope that
yeah,
answers that
yeah.
general question.
You can also use a custom action,
Yeah,
which
very
is
true.
what I've done before. I think in like the custom
Hmm.
actions course.
Hmm.
So you can use a custom action or validation and set the slot that way too.
Hopefully that was helpful. I'm not entirely sure where you're running into trouble exactly, so I hope that's enough information to get
Yeah.
you going. Uh,
Yeah, let us know if that kind of answered your question or not.
Next, we have a question I think is definitely for Mady from Imane. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Is there a video somewhere of the Rasa Enterprise analytics capabilities?
Yeah, great question. We could do like we can schedule a technical demo or we can schedule like an overall Rasa Enterprise demo, but we don't have a video of Rasa Enterprise analytics just publicly available. But if you have any questions, yeah, please reach out and we're happy to give you a demo of that.
Okay, and then you'll get to talk to some of our CSEs who are fabulous, or
They're
some of
amazing.
our solutions architects. Everyone on all of those teams is really really top notch.
Right.
Pac says hi. Hi, welcome to the stream. All right. Question from Amina again. Question 2. If I have an entity that is multiple words, such as credit card, and the user only says credit, will the assistant understand to fill the slots? Do you think having credit as an entity and card as another word would be better? I'd probably use synonyms here.
Yeah.
Let me.
And you can do that in Rasa X too in the UI.
Synonyms. There we go. So what I would do here is, that's the exact example we have. If when people say credit, they're pretty much always talking about credit card. Then you could have credit card be here and just credit be here. Yeah, I probably wouldn't annotate that as two entities because that's going to introduce some perhaps unexpected behavior if people talk about cards in other contexts. But if you wanted both the word credit and the word card, you could also add those as synonyms here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or yeah, you could definitely do it in Rasa X as well.
Yeah. I also want to understand the use case better. Are people gonna only say credit and not credit card? If that's the case, and then what's the use case for folks wanting to say card, or the assistant answering something related to a card?
Yeah.
And if they're like sufficiently different, I would think that that would be fine. But yeah, like Rachel said, probably just add that as a synonym
Yeah. Like if you
if
had
we're
a
talking about credit cards.
credit
Yeah.
cards, debit cards, and gift cards, I probably wouldn't map just the word card to any one of those.
Yeah.
Good question though. Kartik wants to know, I'm going to use Rasa inside my enterprise. Oh, fabulous. I saw Rasa and Rasa X are free and open source. So quick clarification there. Rasa open source is open source, the chatbot framework. Rasa X is free to use, but not open source. Available at no charge. If I'm not looking for support and other features, is it okay to use it, or am I going against some license?
Yeah, you're welcome. You're definitely free to use Rasa open source, of course, and Rasa X, like Rachel mentioned, it's free yet closed source. It's not open source. So you're definitely welcome to continue using that if you're not looking for any kind of support from CSC, or if the use case is narrow or small enough, if you don't think you're going to be rolling it out to a lot of users or scaling it in any way, because enterprise definitely has the tools that you need that's built to scale. So if you think that it's like a small enough or narrow enough use case and you want to continue playing around with it, then yeah, please do so. And then definitely let us know your thoughts and offer some feedback in the forum, because we'd love to hear how you're doing.
Absolutely. It's a little bit like, what is it? If you saw that, like, really parody book cover that says Hadoop for small data, I'm just trying to add this to my CV. If you have a fairly small, non-complex problem, Rasa Enterprise is not going to solve your problems. So, but at some point you might go to the point where you might need some of those features, in which case we're available. All right. Robbie says Rasa is also a brand. Be careful. Yeah, if you want to use our branding for something, definitely reach out to us first.
Please.
Yes. And that's, it's trademark stuff. That's different from software licenses. All right. Next question is from Amina again. Thank you. Is there a max number of words in an entity? I'm pushing the product team to provide and input NLU with keywords, not key phrases, or am I on the right path? Or it doesn't matter, and we can have a lot of terms as an entity value. Do you want to talk about this, Mady?
Yeah, in terms of like number of words, like you mean naming the entity? And so
I think,
or is it like the number of synonyms or training data that you can have per entity?
I think this would be something like, if I'm understanding the question correctly, an entity being like checking account 500K gold plus platinum edition as one entity.
Yeah. And I know we have some best practices on this, but we generally don't recommend that entity names be that long. And I would love to understand or better understand your use case for why we think that we might need really granular, really detailed, really long entity names. It's better to have like a short name. For instance, the example that we were just talking about earlier, credit card, and then have like a bunch of synonyms for that. And then if you're trying to create more intents in entities, maybe working off of a combination of intent and entity is probably the way to go. But if you find that you need to add more detailed and longer entity names, then maybe it makes sense for you to think about multi-bot architecture. Now, I know we have tons of opinions on this, but assistants work best when they have, a really clear and crisp purpose and scope. And then you're continuing to, use real user conversations so that you're building what users want and not what you think that they might want. But yeah, I think I'd love to understand the use case for why we think we need something like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Rachel?
Yeah. So I think that's a great point of sort of delving into the use case a little bit more. I'm thinking about it just from a language data standpoint. Entities should have fairly stable surface forms that are predictable. I shouldn't have an entity where I don't know how people are going to express it, right? Email addresses, great. I know what an email address is going to look like. Describing your feelings towards a close friend, not a great entity. People might use all sorts of words. They might use a very long description. It's not going to have that consistent surface form. And if you have really long entities, I think people aren't likely to say them, right? So every time, just from a probability standpoint, if you think about like language output as being modeled by a language model. I'm just using that as a proxy for cognition here. Every time I add a word, the probability of the string overall goes down. And the more words I add, the less probable it is. I realize I just said the same thing twice. I just paraphrased it, right? So if my entity is apples, that's more likely than, farm fresh golden apple delicious maximum flavor or whatever the full actual product name is. People aren't going to say that. You're not going to see that in your data. I guess another example would be like if you've ever gone to eat at a restaurant that has theming, and like a fruit platter will be called like Captain's Choice Supreme Pirate Bounty Fruit Platter. No one orders that by that name. They order the fruit platter. And if you try to expect and build your bot behavior around people using that full name, you will have a frustrating user experience. So that's different from sort of thinking about the use case itself, but more, are people going to use your branded terms in this example? And the answer is probably not, almost always, unless they're a dad trying to embarrass their kids, which is a very narrow narrow portion of the population.
Yeah, I mean, you said it really well. So there's lots of things to consider, like think about the use case, think about user experience, and then just like from a language and data perspective, think about, surface forms.
Definitely. And we'll actually be talking a little bit more about this on my stream on Friday, because I think this is a question that can be quite unintuitive. What types of information does it make sense to extract with an entity? What types of information does it make to store as an intent? Next question from Kartik. Does the transformer model need retraining even if I only add a new form or slot? Oh, that's...
Only if you add a new form or slot.
I think it depends on which transformer model you're talking about.
Yeah, and I would say yes, it does. Right?
Yeah. So if the slot is from an existing entity, I don't think you'll need to retrain diet, but you will need to retrain TED if you're doing both of them. Right. So basically, you can think about it like if you are asking your assistant to do a new behavior, it needs to have trained on examples of that behavior. And if you haven't retrained, it's not going to work. That said, I would recommend using checkpointing, particularly if it's a large model, so that you are just retraining from the current version of the model instead of retraining from the very beginning initialization.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's a good question too. I mean, as a rule of thumb, I would retrain, but sometimes the training is smart enough to skip.
Yeah, and we should in almost all cases automatically, if you don't need to retrain either the dialogue policy or the NLU, it should not be trained. That was a very convoluted sentence. I'm just trying to rephrase what Mady said.
I mean, yeah, essentially, I think what we're saying is if the slot is, for instance, featureized and it affects the conversation flow, then yeah, you definitely should.
All right, question from Tapak. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Every time I try to run Rasa using Docker Compose, I have permission errors with PyDB. How do I solve it?
I am not sure. Because I would like to understand what kind of permission errors, and I'm thinking about this. And I want to say that this is something that, our developers do run into. And this is definitely something that we're looking into. But I'm trying to think about what kind of permission errors with PyDB. Rachel, what was I haven't used Docker Compose in a minute. When was the last time you ran into like a permission error? So I will say it's probably like my last workshop, which was a few months ago.
Yeah, I've mostly been using Kubernetes, K8s.
Yeah.
People
Okay.
say netties and needies, and I never want to commit to one or the other. Yeah, mostly we recommend people stick to K8s these days just because the deployment process tends to be a little bit smoother for most people. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever run into permission errors, but that's because I've always run as root because I always have top level permissions in the small containers that I spin up for my work. And I've not been working in a shared VM, which I think like it could be like specific to your permissions in your specific deployment environment. I don't think we have enough
Yeah.
information to answer this. I would go
Right.
to the question. Yeah, to the nope,
Or
it's on this
or
side.
maybe, yeah, like maybe if, for instance, if the error says maybe it's a file permission issue,
Mm,
so that could be more of a Docker setup issue than a Rasa issue. So if you have more information on the permission error, or if you want to post that in our forum, then I'm sure we can look into that.
yeah, because there's no real easy way to share error logs on the YouTube chat, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yep.
Good luck. I'm not trying to be facetious. I am genuinely wishing you good luck.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Same.
Question 4. Since my chatbot is in French, I have a lot of apostrophes. Should I include them in an NLU or provide it without it? Or should I start with them and adapt later once the assistant is in production and have real data? And just to clarify, it was not the name of the entity, it was the value of the entity. And yeah, I would say entity values should be as succinct and predictable and consistent as possible. So apostrophes. Do you want to take this one, Mady?
Oof. I'm not quite sure. I would say that, yeah, what are,
I would strongly recommend keeping them in.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure we keep punctuation by default with diet. I'm like 80% sure. I might have to go dig through the docs a little bit, or even possibly the source code to see what sort of cleaning that we do. But that's important information, right? It could help disambiguate between specific words. The one reason why I wouldn't strip apostrophes from existing data. One thing that I might do is if I'm seeing a lot of examples that don't use the apostrophes just because people are typing quickly and being informal. In that situation, if that's data that you're seeing, I would add examples without the apostrophes. So like in all my training in French has been like in a very formal classroom environment. So I haven't seen a
yeah.
lot of like user generated text in French. I'm guessing people drop the apostrophes as they do in English when they're just typing quickly. So I would have examples of both as long as that's a good representation of what users are doing when they use your assistant, would be sort of my general suggestion. And overall,
In English, yeah.
no,
Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like in English, we definitely recommend that you do both. So I can't speak for French. I've never trained
Mhm.
a chatbot in French, but in English, for instance, I don't want to pay my bill because I don't understand it. I'm gonna include training data with both the apostrophe for don't and also without the apostrophes. Just because when I type, I tend to not include apostrophes, and a lot of users, like Rachel said, when they're speaking informally, will skip that. Um, I Now, if it's are you talking about just apostrophes or also like other kinds of accents? And then in which case would that be default in a French model? What do you think?
I would still include
Well,
both. My
yeah,
strong
right.
intuition is that sometimes people include them and sometimes they don't. Um, yeah, just having seen some user generated text in other languages with diacritics. Um, in general, the less you transform your data, your raw text data, the better, because the closer a representation it's going to be of what you're seeing in production, and also the fewer steps, so it can help to reduce latency. So I sort of the traditional NLU pipeline is, remove punctuation, set everything to lowercase, normalize a bunch of stuff.
Mm.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. Also, we don't have to anymore because a lot of the memory constraints that early systems were built under kind of aren't a thing anymore. Like we can handle,
Right.
the extra bit. All right. Uh, question from Carlton. Oh, this is fun. Planning to use Rasa for an ontology-based application using knowledge graphs. I'm not sure what support Rasa has with graph databases.
That's a good question. I will say that I'm not quite sure yet. We're working on that. But I'm sure we'll be able to answer that question in a little while. If you just want to wait for some announcements from us.
And in the meantime, I'm pretty sure we have a blog post.
It
Yeah.
just came out today, right?
I was thinking of the one from like way earlier, like that Tanya did
Oh.
a couple of years ago. So this is a little vintage, but it is just sort of like a general. I believe this is a graph-based knowledge base. Sort of a very general introduction from Tanya about sort of the general ways that you can interact with them. But yeah, we definitely hear that it is a big need of a community and something we're thinking about. So yes, you can do it. We're working to make the process easier, but it's definitely doable now. Okay. Ooh, Amina has an example. Sorry, that I made that face because it was a long entity. In my case, there are some situations. So one of the entities is named situation, and the value is acquisition construction main residence. Should I divide it or have it as a whole?
Yeah, I would again think about some of the things that we've discussed along the lines of, are users going to be saying exactly that?
No.
And is that one of the main ways to express acquisition construction main residence? Are they going to be using exactly that? If that's the case, then probably. But it still feels like maybe that's not something users would say. Would they just say something like main residence construction? And if so, I would try to make that more succinct.
But that is like
Yeah.
Would that be if it's something like a set phrase that is always said the same way, like, the title of a specific tax document or describing a specific type of account, and people do use that, then you might be okay. I don't know. It's sort of what I'm trying to say is it's an empirical question. Are people saying it? Another question from Srivatsa. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. How many examples do we have to give for an intent in NLU if the model needs to recognize and predict properly? Yeah, what are your sort of general thoughts and guidelines here?
Yeah, great question. I think that as a best practice, we like to say you need at a minimum, you need around 15 examples per intent, training examples per intent. But our general recommendation is that you should definitely have more. And then the sooner you start training with real user data, real user conversations, the better it is for you to be able to see how real users are phrasing things, or how they're trying to express their intention. And then you can use that data. You can train with that data. You can add that to your training data. And then Rasa X or Enterprise should make it easier for you to not just collect that information, but also add it to your training data, or to your stories, or to test stories, or something like that. But yeah, at a minimum, we say definitely at least 15, but you should plan on including more.
Yeah. And I would say the reason we're a little bit cagey with that is because in a machine learning system like Rasa, every class, so an intent, every class and multi-class classification system has a dependency on every other class as they're related to the overall data that you're trying to model, right? So it's not like it's not like a class in object-oriented programming where it's very modular, and if I change this class, as long as I run my code checks and make sure I've cut all the dependencies, it's fine. If I remove a class in a multi-class classification problem, my system's still going to make a prediction, right? If I add a bunch of classes, those will be considered in the prediction. So your examples that you're giving it are trying to help your system to look at this space of what people are saying and divide it correctly in a way that's useful to you and conforms to your mental model of how the system is divided, this structured of data. So if you have an intent that is people are expressing in very varied ways, right? It's sort of like a more spread out thing you're trying to capture. You're probably going to need more examples. If people tend to always say something the exact same way or in a very similar way, you'll probably need fewer examples. So that is our very general guideline, but it's really going to depend. And if you have 15 examples in all your intents and you have, not great performance, that doesn't necessarily, it's not like a magic number, right? It really depends on everything else in your system, which I know is frustrating to hear, but that's the price you pay for the flexibility of machine learning.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was helpful. All right. Amina, I noticed since I'm using conditional response variation, the model takes much longer to train. Why is that? Is there a way to make it faster? I'm trying this on a real small, simple assistant. Ooh, there might be a latent variable here. If you have upgraded recently and you're now using TensorFlow 2.6, we are getting some information that is increasing training times. So if you updated and then added the conditional response variation and you're seeing increasing training times, then that might be the issue. I would actually post in the forums about that because I think Keds would want to know more about that. I think that's something that he would be interested in. So Chris Keds, who's been on the Office Hours before, is one of the people who worked on this feature, and I think he'd want more information on training time changes.
Yeah. I mean, conditional response variations are like part of your response generation. So that typically means less like repetition in stories. So in theory, it shouldn't increase your training time. But like Rachel said, I'm sure kids would be really interested in this setup. So if you want to post your like chatbot setup on the Rasa forum, that might be helpful for us.
Yeah, very helpful. All right. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. It's good to know. Subhash wants to know, can you provide a GPU-ready Docker container with Rasa and TensorFlow installed? I've had numerous difficulties with matching CUDA and TensorFlow and Rasa version compatibility. I know the struggle very well.
I feel you. Yeah, we feel you. And I would have to think more about that. And if you just want to reach out via like a contact us form or something like that, I'm sure that our support team would be happy to look at this and try to help you better and see what we can do here. I can't answer as to whether or not we can provide a GPU ready Docker container, but that's definitely something that we can take a look at and see if that's something we might be able to do.
Sorry, I'm just I'm on the website now. The contact us form. Do you know where it is? We recently, if you haven't noticed, we recently did a website refresh. Look how beautiful it is. So nice. But I don't remember where the form is anymore.
Okay, no worries. I mean, it should be in the product page, enterprise page under product. So Rasa Enterprise, or just like enterprise overview, something like that should be able to take you to the contact us form.
Yeah, there we go. This one.
Cool.
Yeah, so reach out there. And I will say, CUDA is difficult because it's very low level, it's very hardware dependent. So even if we had a container that was like super optimized for a specific GPU, that doesn't mean that it would work well for all GPUs or TPUs or, specific chips, even if they're sort of, branded the same. So I feel you. I feel your pain. It's very frustrating. Um, yeah, but I think it would be helpful to learn more about your specific use case and if we can help out a little bit more. All right. Oh, Subash wants to know about requirements. Requirements we can definitely help you with. I believe it is. Nope, that's the blog. There we go. I believe it's right under Rasa X. Oh, you just wanted to know about the Rasa requirements.
Yeah, the requirements
Is it the
file. If we
deployments?
can like provide that as opposed to just the whole Docker container, yeah. Might be best to like reach out to support, right, Rachel?
Yeah, that
And
might
see
be
if
the
we can do something
easiest.
like that. Yeah.
But we do have a Helm chart, and I think it's on this page. Let me find it. We definitely have like uh, I don't see it on a very quick peruse, but we do have a minimum requirements somewhere. Isn't it a Rasa X? Under quick install? Am I? Uh, yeah. The embedded cluster requirements. This is what I was thinking of, and this is for Rasa X, so it's a little bit bigger than for base Rasa, but this should at least get you started, depending on the size of your assistant. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, requirements text would also be helpful. I know that was not your question, but also it's something that I haven't talked about in a while, so I thought I'd check. All right, question from Amina. I have an entity that's value is mentioned in a specific intent and in inform as part of information while creating the utterance associated to this entity. It's a button. In the payload, should I mention inform entity name, entity value, or intent name, entity value? Does it matter? Or as long as you mention the right trigger for the utterance?
Yeah, good question. I think since in your case you want the buttons to also pass entities to the assistant, then I would say use the former, which is inform entity name, entity value. I would also just check the docs to make sure, or check the docs for like the specific version you're using.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would use the former.
This is the current
Which is
button stock.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I will say, again, it should be help. We are rethinking the ways that we fill slots, which I know this is like slightly different, but should make this a little bit more explicit and easy, clear. All right. Question 7. So, while using NGROC, the bot behavior changed. Does NGROC depend on an internet connection, and can it make it slower? So, quick caveat: hopefully, you're just doing this for like the first stages of testing. It's definitely not a deployment method. We strongly recommend against that. It's not what it's designed for. It could definitely be slower if you have some network latency that you're running into. And can NGROC run on local networks? You know, off the top of your head? I think it can.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So it could be a network slowdown. It should be able to work on a local network without an internet connection, but you all have to be connected to the same network. Behavior changed. don't know what type of behavior would change. Maybe if you were using a
Yeah,
specific channel you hadn't used before and you had some channel specific behavior.
right. If you're using another channel, if it's not pointed to the right channel,
It could be.
yeah.
Yeah. Hard to say exactly what might happen there, but yeah. Another question from Amina. How to get the value of a payload? And my question, the payload represents intents. So how can I get the value of an intent without custom actions? I tried it with a custom action and it works fine. Just out of curiosity, is there another way? So this is specifically with a button. Can you set something using the name of the intent?
Let me see. As far as I know, custom actions and forms are the hooks into the dialog flow. So that's where you can access the tracker, slots, entities, whatever else. So, like forms too? What do you think? Maybe?
Yeah. I think in a form would probably be the simplest way to do this because you can use the from underscore intent
Yeah.
way to fill your slot. Again, I hear that this is right now a little bit of a underspecified process, which is why it's getting a major revamp. I know I keep teasing this. I'm very excited. We've gotten like, it'll be a little bit more work up front, but it'll help you avoid weird edge cases. And we've gotten a lot of bugs from users where sort of automatic behavior that was happening behind the scenes led to a lot of confusion around how slots were being filled, and this should address that.
Yeah, for sure.
Enemy says I'm using Slack for the NGROC update. So yeah, it could be,
okay.
It could be that you had some Slack specific behavior that was being triggered. Sorry, go ahead, Mady.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, I think going back to the value of the payload, if you want to use the value of the entity in a response without using custom actions, like if that's something that you're particular about, then make sure to have a slot that matches the entity, and then use the slot as a placeholder in your response, maybe. And I would try that.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to NGROC, yeah, it could be like a Slack behavior or Slack specific issue. Like Rachel said.
Question from Saya. Is there a plan for Rasa to support African low-resource languages? I noticed the general challenges lie at the corpus level. Even where the corpus has been sourced online, the word accuracy is poor. Yeah, that's definitely a big challenge. So I would say Rasa is language agnostic. So in theory, it should work with any human language that is written and has a writing system. In reality, I mean, practically, you need, some additional tooling outside of just the NLU and the dialogue management. So if it's not white space tokenized, you need a tokenizer. If it's if you have pre-trained embeddings, that's great. You can also train your own, which is a little bit more flexible, but will result in a system that's like probably been trained on less data and will be a little bit less flexible. But yeah, no, we don't have, as far as I know, specific plans right now to build language-specific tools for any particular language. But we hope to support integration with those tools. Also, if you're not familiar, there is a research group doing really, really great work. And I am not entirely sure that I'm going to say this correctly, but Masakane? Masakane. I'm sorry, I really do not know how to say this, and I apologize, and that is my failure. Um, that has a lot of work from researchers in Africa working on different languages. And you might be able to find some resources here, but I mean, it's a very linguistically diverse place. Um, there is far too much work on English and far too little work on other languages. And I don't know how much we can do to fix that, but I definitely hear you that it is a problem and a challenge. Do you have any other things to offer there, Mady?
No, I think you covered it. Not much, but I will say that I know that we're currently within Rasa talking about how we can make certain data sets publicly available. Rachel, you and I talked about this a little while ago, so it might make sense to pick that back up again and see how we can provide some like data sets for the community.
No. Yeah, like we'd love to help, but also, I would probably never be able to guarantee that we're definitely going to have, support for a
Right.
specific language, um, beyond being able to extend our framework to handle it in a very transparent, open way. I wish we could work with all languages, but
Yeah.
that is, if someone says their system works for all languages, they're lying. I don't know how else to put it. Yeah. All right.
Totally. Absolutely.
Mahatab, sorry if I'm saying that right, says, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm delighted if I'm saying that right. I'm trying to install Rasa X on Windows 10 using the same command you're using in the video, but it takes a long time. How can I solve this problem? Thank you. I will tell you that in the video, I sped it up. There is some movie magic behind there where I don't remember if I just like deleted a big swath of it or not. Yeah, it takes some time. It's a fairly big
Yeah.
install.
Absolutely. I was not going to answer this question because I know, Rachel, you've done a ton of work on Windows. And then I will say, just not specific to Windows, but in a lot of my videos as well, I kind of like speed up the installation and training aspects just because, it takes, sorry, that it takes a while.
We assume that you don't want to sit there watching us go while we wait for our, 100 epochs or whatever.
Yep.
It says, thank you so much. Always a good time. This is really helpful. It's great to see you again. Thanks for asking fantastic questions. I hope you were helpful.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Thanks, Amina.
Sia says, thanks for the answer. I'll look deeper into the integration aspect. Any data sets would be great. Yeah, we hear you. And I believe, I'm pretty sure that there have been some specific data sets out of that. Also, there's a workshop specifically on African languages at, I think it's one of those rotating ACL workshops. Let me see if I can find the name real quick. I've been a reviewer for it a couple of times. Africa NLP is what it's called. So let me pop that up. And also, I know that there's a lot of Africa NLP workshops. So this is the one from 2021, but there have been a number, and you might learn about a new resource by looking through their proceedings. And obviously right now, the Nigeria tech scene is going through a lot. But I know that there has been a lot of work there. I don't know how much energy people have to sharing it online right now, given everything that's going on. But there's also a Ghanaian NLP group as well that might be relevant if you're working on a language spoken in Ghana. But obviously that's not all of them. Most of them are from the same couple language families. So yeah, I would love to see and help support more work on African languages.
Yeah. Is that the second workshop on African NLP?
There have been a couple.
Yeah, there have been a couple for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's like proceedings from like the first and second workshop available online too, if you want to
Yeah,
give
for
that
sure.
a glance.
Like all of the papers are linked here,
Yeah.
and also the videos of people talking about the papers, which can be fantastic to hear people like talking about their work. I often find that I understand it much better if I can watch a video of somebody talking about their research than just reading the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some good examples there. Yeah.
100%.
Daniel says data sets are the hardest thing to find. Ah, man. Uh, very, very true.
Yeah.
Mm. All right, so we've got just a couple minutes left before we wrap up for the hour. Mady, I want to make sure I give you a chance to take a couple minutes. Is there anything that you want to share with the Rasa developer community? Any like cool resources you found, words of wisdom? You know, uh, I don't know, your favorite
Yeah.
cartoon you want people to watch? Whatever. Is there anything you wanna share with the community?
Oh, damn. I wish I had prepared for this. I don't have a favorite cartoon that I watch. I would have, if you had told me that question beforehand, Rachel, I would have had something ready for you. But no, I mean, I know we're doing lots of exciting things on the open source side, on the Rasa X enterprise side. So I would say like stay tuned. I know we've said this a few times in this office hours, but we have lots of exciting things coming up. So please check, our Twitter, YouTube for, or just like, our community Slack for updates. And we will have events coming up early next year as well that we're planning for. I know that we typically do the Rasa Summit and L3 AI. So I would say like stay tuned for the Rasa User Summit. That's going to be sometime in February, March, depending on when we do that. That will be a great place to hang out, play some games, talk about stuff, and hopefully present some interesting research and development work that I've been doing. But other than that, Rachel, thank you for having me. I love watching office hours. I love being on here. I think this is a great resource for our community, and it's a great place to hang out and chat. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to have you as always. Quick preview for the week. So tomorrow we are going to be doing the special edition security office hours with Jamie. So bring your security questions and we'll talk about, I think this is our first GitHub security advisory that we pushed. So we want to talk a little bit about, the process, why we decided it was a big issue, what we're doing about it, what you should do about it. And then on Friday, I prepared a little sort of game show about whether something should be an intent or an entity from sort of a implementation, at this stage in the project where you're writing your PRD, you've written your PRT and you're working on implementation details, that sort of stage of the software development process, and figuring out what should be an intent, what should be an entity, what it depends on, and developing skills there. And then next week, I think we're not going to have any streams. I'm going to be out of town, but if somebody pops into one of those slots, I'll make sure to update y'all on the YouTube community tab. So thanks so much for joining today, everybody. Fantastic questions as always. Thank you so much for your time, Mady, and we will